feeling burnt out in my business, right? There's a lot of this fiery energy. I'm exhausted at the end of the day. I'm taking on too much. I'm working on too many things at once. It feels kind of like uncontrollable. And then I would notice inside my body, I was experiencing burnout symptoms as well. Maybe my chronic conditions would come up, like IBS flares would come up back in my body. I could just notice inflammation and holding on to that in my body as well. And I noticed that there's these energies that we have within our body that are mirrored in our business, and they become one and the same. So as I began to kind of decode that gave me such a good roadmap of how I can navigate my business no matter what quote unquote blockage shows up.
The same pattern again and again. It's like trusting your intuition, hearing your inner voice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of all these healing modalities, is that each of us get to pick which one we want to paint with and what we want to color with. And there's so many beyond what I'm using and what you're using. And ultimately, what I think the thread behind it is just getting you to trust your intuition.
Hello, beautiful souls. So here I am today, your host, Julia, and I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Angelica. She's a spiritual marketing coach who has been in the area for more than 10 years. I really find her social media quite fascinating. She has her skin in the game. She's a really successful entrepreneur, and I invited her specifically to all of you here today so that she could share with us her wisdom, which is quite practical. Angelica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Julia. I'm excited to be here.
So we will get started from your background. Could you please share with us today, how did you start your spiritual journey and your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. For a lot of healers, when they think back into their life, once they've had the information of understanding these intuitive experiences they've had, they can probably link it back to childhood. And like as young as like 3, I can think about these spiritual experiences that I've had. But when I've decided to really make it a career later on in life, is my first modality was yoga. I loved yoga so much because of the mind-body connection. I was a dancer my whole life. So it just felt like it was a really natural modality for me to pick up. And from there, I became a full-time yoga instructor, and I just loved it. And I realized like this was the realm for me. I love learning about the chakras. I love learning about the Yoga Sutras. Yogic philosophy just meant so much to me. And I just wanted to dive further and further. So I got certified as an Ayurvedic practitioner shortly after. And then I found Reiki. I became a Reiki master. So I was collecting all these experiences and teachings, and they led me to start my own business. And although it seems like that was like a very easy linear trajectory, taking each of those steps was actually super terrifying. And the common thread that I see in my journey was being able to decipher between what my intuition was versus what the voices of what other people wanted me to do in my life that have led me to where I've been. So for example, that first choice to become a full-time yoga instructor, although I was doing yoga every day and it was a dream of mine, a desire that I had to become a full-time yoga instructor, that came with a lot of shame because I had a business marketing degree. I was in the fashion PR world at the time. Taking and leaving that world to become a full-time yoga instructor felt crazy and terrifying and did not make sense to a lot of my inner circle and my friends and family for good reason. They were just worried about me being able to support myself and what I was going through. So it's that decision alone helped me to really tap down into something deeper within inside of me, this desire that I had to become a healer and having to listen to it no matter how crazy the outside perspective really looked from it. And then from there, that like really laid the foundation of, oh, I can trust that there's this deep inner knowing within me to make decisions when it seems like everything else is telling me not. So another time that happened is when I left my full-time position at the yoga studio to start my own business and go into it completely on my own full-time. Again, that was like a very hard and risky decision to make, but there was a strong inner knowing that I knew that was the path for me. So a huge part of my journey is being able to trust my intuition and follow that voice, as crazy as it can sound, because that's going to lead you to what your soul really wants.
That's quite interesting what you mentioned here. Why? Because I keep hearing like the same pattern again and again. It's like trusting your intuition, hearing your inner voice. And that's exactly actually what I'm teaching here with my tarot course. It's kind of like we tap into our own intuition, into our own subconscious level, and we unravel all this stuff so that we could tap into our own power to move forward. And you are the living representation of that. So I am deeply interested in your way, because it seems like you managed to do it on your own. So without tarot, with your own methodics and techniques. So I would love to understand what actually made you trust your intuition. What is the framework around it? Maybe you could tell me the story here. How did all this trusting intuition started for you? Maybe it started from a specific story in your life, like that inner voice, because it doesn't start out of the blue, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of all these healing modalities, is that each of us get to pick which one we want to paint with and what we want to color with. And there's so many beyond what I'm using and what you're using. And ultimately, what I think the thread behind it is just getting you to trust your intuition. So for me, that looked like a lot of Vedic philosophy, yoga, and then Ayurveda, and then Reiki. Very ancient sciences is what I resonate with. And basically what I've extracted from, even though I've had years and so many certifications and hours of experience learning all these modalities, the common thread is being able to read and understand energy. So Ayurveda, there are 5 different types of energies, or 5 different elements that distill down into 3 different energies. And so I really learned to see the world through this lens of, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. For example, in the summertime when it's really hot and you are not going to want more spicy foods, that's going to cause more inflammation, and you're not going to want to do more intense workouts, but you're going to want to have juicy fruits. You're going to want to bring more coolness to lower inflammation. It's a lot what Ayurveda is diet and lifestyle practices. And so I began to take those principles and just apply them, of course, to my diet and my lifestyle, and I saw my body start to change. But then I started just apply these principles of living with your intuition to everything in my life. So when I was starting my business, I would notice, okay, when I'm not getting in new clients, or I'll take that last example. So like, let's say I'm feeling burnt out in my business, right? There's a lot of this fiery energy. I'm exhausted at the end of the day. I'm taking on too much. I'm working on too many things at once. It feels kind of like uncontrollable. And then I would notice inside my body, I was experiencing burnout symptoms as well. Maybe my chronic conditions would come up, like IBS flares would come up back in my body. I could just notice inflammation and holding on to that in my body as well. And I noticed that there's these energies that we have within our body that are mirrored in our business, and they become one and the same. So as I began to kind of decode that gave me such a good roadmap of how I can navigate my business, no matter what quote unquote blockage shows up. So there's these 3 different types of energies that can show up in our business. And as you know, as an entrepreneur, we're constantly like refining, trying new things, wearing all the hats and everything. But it's so great to have an intuitive system to fall back on to say, okay, let me take a couple steps back and see what's happening here. Where's the imbalance in energy, and how can I know, using the things of my intuition, rebalance that energy to bring forward energy? So when I'm feeling burnt out in my business, how can I actually implement more rest, more stillness, more silence to receive intuitive messages, more time for reflection, so that I'm not burning out and I could take a pause and then come back and have refreshed energy, get out of my creative rut, get things rolling again, and feel balanced in my business again. So
I love it. I love it. So you mentioned 3 types of energies, and it seems like you are really juggling around them. Can you please clarify them to us and how you are working it out in one specific example?
yeah, so the energy that I just talked about, we call this Pitta in Ayurveda. It's made up of the elements fire and water. So those of you who know astrology, it's similar, because Vedic system has their own system of astrology, but you can think of like fiery signs, right? They're very motivated, they're very passionate, they're known for being trailblazers. And this manifests in their physical body too, right? They can build muscle very easily. They have strong appetites. This is what the system Ayurveda tells us. And when it's out of balance, when there's too much of the fiery energy, what happens? You burn out. You're putting out too much either you're taking in too much information, you're trying to do too much, and eventually that leads to inflammation in the body. And then you could say that leads to inflammation in your business. You're just burnt out. You're like, I don't know what to do next. I've tried everything and it feels like I'm not getting the results that I really want to. That's the first energy. The second energy is called Kapha energy. It's made up of earth and water. And so you can think about earth signs in astrology. They're very reliable. They're very supportive, very nurturing. Think of like the Cancer, the Taurus types. They also love structure and they love comfort. Now, when we're out of balance with the earth element, when there's too much earth element, what happens? It doesn't budge. It stays sticky. It's heavy. So if you're feeling stuck in your body, like gaining weight, or if you're feeling like, I don't know what my next step forward is, or you're feeling really stuck in your old ways, that's going to show up in your business too. You're feeling like, why aren't the clients coming? Why can't I move forward in my business? Why does it feel like everything's so heavy and kind of murky waters? Like I'm unclear on what my next step forward is. That is when there's a kapha imbalance. And then the last one is going to be a vata, and vata is made up of the elements air and ether. So think about the air signs in astrology. They're very creative. They're very whimsical and spontaneous. They like to fly at the seat of their pants. Think of like the Gemini type of energy. Very creative and very in their mind. Now, when they're out of balance, when you're too in your mind, what happens? You get anxiety, worry, overwhelm. The mind is moving too fast.
That's a big issue today.
Totally. It's like 90% of all disease in Ayurveda is categorized as a vata imbalance because of this stress and worry thing that we've all got going on. And it makes sense. We're in the age of information. There's so much information that we're digesting. In our physical bodies, that could be bloating, that could be gas. And then how this can be in your business is feeling like, I'm starting all these different projects, but I feel like I can't finish one, or I have all these ideas, but I feel paralyzed as to what one to take to move forward in my business. And so you don't take any action, or you start one thing and then you go on to the next thing and then nothing ever gets done. You're never really getting any results, but it's kind of like the hamster wheel of like, I'm moving, but like there's no forward action.
Oh, I love it. I love your explanation. You know why? Because it is so intersecting actually, even with tarot cards, because there are 4 elements there. I heard only 3 right now from Ayurvedic perspective here, because you mentioned everything except earth, right? So I was thinking,
earth is in the
what about
kapha dosha.
earth?
So kapha dosha, the second one that I mentioned, it's earth and water.
Oh, that's interesting. So, because guess what? In tarot cards, we have also, like in minor arcana, there is minor and major arcana. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but for all those who are beginners here, so the tarot deck consists out of major and minor arcana. So in minor arcana, we have the representation of suits of 4 elements, which are cups. It represents water, and then wands, it represents energy and fire. And then we have swords, it represents air. And then we have pentacles, it represents all materialistic aspect of our life, which is earth. So this is quite interesting how different ancient technologies here are intersecting, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what I love about all these modalities is like how they are all really connected. Ayurveda has 5 elements, so that 5th one is ether. But I love, the main ones that you mentioned is definitely aligned.
Yeah, so basically in all the ancient technologies, when you studying them, they also talk about like the 4 elements from this earth, but then either, it's kind of like they call it either space or universe, whatever it is. So when you go to tarot world, you can hear about that space here and there. So when it is like we are talking already about the major suits, we can use that element of space there when we form the characters. The characters, and it's the combination of different characteristics in a specific archetype. So you want to just add that element, the element of spirit, right? Nothing here is created without spirit. So that's really interesting for me always to talk to different experts in multiple fields. Why? Because every time I find those intersections, those points kind of like from Ayurveda. What is Ayurveda actually when you translate it? It definitely has.
So it breaks down to two words, ayas and Veda. And so Veda means knowledge and ayas means life. So it's the knowledge of life.
Knowledge of life. That is really, really powerful. Have you been to India?
I have. I was
Yeah, you've
grateful
been
to
there.
be there, to live there for a month when I was getting my 300-hour yoga certification. And I love it. I love Vedic culture so much.
Where you've been there specifically again?
In Rishikesh?
So that's actually that specific place for, I believe so, Vinyasa and Ayurveda and all this stuff, right? Because you're also certified for Vinyasa.
Yeah, I am. I got certified in Vinyasa specifically in the United States, but when I went to Rishikesh, I was looking for a Kundalini certification. So that's what I was trained in when I was in Rishikesh. But yeah, it's the yoga capital of the world. So very much lots of yoga.
I always have a question for those who are deep into all this yogic stuff. Have you experienced that Kundalini awakening?
Yeah, I think anyone can experience the Kundalini awakening. I think some people have really dramatic experiences if they're not necessarily ready for it. So basically, the metaphor of the Kundalini energy is that it's a serpent that lies dormant at the base of your spine, which is one of your main energy points. It's called the root chakra. When you work with the Kundalini energy, you can activate the serpent and it coils up your spine and it activates the 7 major energy portals inside your body. And so depending on how far up that serpent goes up your spine, it activates these very distinct energy channels and that can awaken you. But first it has to clear out a lot of gunk, right? There's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of blockages that you have to release. So sometimes it could feel kind of painful. That's why the spiritual path, I feel sometimes when you go on it, it's like, oh my God, all of a sudden it feels like lonely or it feels like a lot of pain that you're releasing. But once you clear that, it actually helps to activate the fullest potential. So that means it opens up your intuitive gifts and you're able to maybe see synchronicities, or you're able to have really clear dreams, or you're able to download really specific messages from your guides. So I love working with the Kundalini energy for that reason, because it helps you to connect you to source.
That's powerful. But when I think about Kundalini awakening, it became so fashionable today. Do you have to prepare yourself in a specific way? Because what I hear from what you say right now, there is lots of pain along the way happening.
Yeah, I think that sometimes the reason why it gets a bad rap for it of like, because it can feel almost like a psychedelic experience if you're doing a lot of Kundalini, because there's a lot of breath work. And so if you are not in a place of feeling grounded, or you've went through something really traumatic and your body hasn't grounded their nervous system yet, when you activate these higher states of consciousness, it can feel over expansive and it could be too much. So overall, I do recommend Kundalini. If you go to the proper teacher, they're not going to dysregulate your nervous system. They're going to work with it, and it can work to ground you as well. So I think it just depends on the teacher. But basically, that activation it's a lot more subtle usually than what people experience. And it happens from you consistently practicing and attuning into that frequency of a higher consciousness.
So basically, I hear from you what you say. It's kind of like one-on-one approach in case if, let's say, I had a painful childhood and I experienced lots of anxieties, OCD, something in that regard, I would better go through some therapeutic session with one-on-one approach. Do I hear it correctly?
I think everyone's different. And it's, for me, I'm always going to say, go back to what your intuition is telling you. Or do you keep hearing the word Kundalini? Does it show up in your life? Are you feeling called to it? Does it feel enchanting? Then sure, go ahead and take a class, but do your research and say, okay, is this yoga teacher vetted? Where did they get trained in? Do they have a lineage where they come from, where they learn Kundalini? And then go and take the class and then see, oh, okay, do I want to go deeper? Do I want to work with this person one-on-one? Do I want to get certified?
Yeah, it makes total sense. It's again tapping into your intuition, into your self-empowerment along the way. And I always, when I hear such powerful teachers as you here, I always see that code of responsibility. So what is responsibility for you? Could you please elaborate a bit more? Because responsibility for everyone, it's like different definition with words, but in the end, we all come back to the same seed. And I love asking all people whom I have deep reverence and respect to this type of question.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that responsibility is only to your own personal dharma, which is basically your own intention and what your path is the only responsibility you really can take is to be responsible for yourself. So what that looks like for me is staying very close to my healing journey, making sure that I'm very clear in my energy. And when I'm not, then taking time to really self-reflect and clean up my side of the street so that I'm not projecting it onto my clients or my friends or my family. I'm supposed to be a conduit for healing energy. And so if I'm cluttered, I'm not going to be able to be that for other people. And I'm going to need to take a step back and make sure that I'm tending to myself. If we clean up our own side of the street, like everyone can maintain a healthy life. Early on in when I started to be a healer, that was a huge thing for me as I would take responsibility for my clients, like their success, like emotional responsibility for them when they were going through things. And as much as you want to help heal someone else, it's completely up to them to do that. All you can do, again, is be the guide for them, to give them information if they are willing and they want to put in the effort. But other than that, it's kind of like hands in the air, surrender. Anything that happens after that is completely up to them. And sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with you. If your client or someone comes to you and they don't get the healing that they need, you may not be the right teacher for them. It doesn't mean that you're a good or a bad teacher. It just means that that wasn't the right vibrational match for each other. And most of the time, though, I will say I've been so fortunate to work and with people. They come to me, they are contracted to work with me. And it's so beautiful to have this relationship where they are able to step into their power, where they do take responsibility for themselves. They're out of this victim mentality of, oh, I'm trapped to feel sick, or I'm trapped to feel disease in my body, or I'm trapped to feel unsuccessful in my business. They're ready to make those changes. They're ready to put in the effort, and they're going to take responsibility for their side of the street and do what it takes.
Actually, it's really a really interesting question regarding responsibility and starting something on your own in this life, taking responsibility on something beyond you. And many times when I saw people here, different individuals, it doesn't matter if you are man or women, it's actually taking responsibility for what you are doing, your career fully. Are you staying into your 9 to 5 or you are moving forward, right? Maybe at some point of view, just developing yourself to a top-notch, let's say, top manager in a big corporation, it's the area of responsibility which you want to take. You don't need necessarily to be a freelancer, to be the entrepreneur. So understanding the responsibility which you want to take in your life as well, because sometimes it might be torturous for you to start even the business. Not everyone can handle the risks. So is it the level of responsibility which you also evaluate with your clients when they come to you, meaning that, today it's kind of like a fashion. I want to be entrepreneur. Everyone says, I want to be entrepreneur. But do you help your clients from that perspective, understanding that maybe like at this level, you are not really ready to take that level of risk? Maybe it's until a certain amount of time you want to grow within this company, to take slightly more responsibility here and then tap out of there.
Yeah, anyone knows who's an entrepreneur, it's the least fashionable thing you could do. It's the most difficult journey that you'll ever go on because it requires you to constantly meet yourself and commit to your healing journey and to not just go on automatic anymore. So I'm really clear and specific about the clients that I work with. I won't just work with anyone. They have to get to a point where they're really ready, where they feel called to share whatever it is that they have to share. They're very clear in their intention. They're very clear in their goals. I need to know that what they've tried in the past before, that they have put forth effort.
I'm sorry for interrupting. How do you assess that clarity in them?
Yeah, you could just have systems in place for that so that you can screen clients so that you know ahead of time and you can ask them those questions.
What are the main things which you look at when you assess them? So that, because why I'm asking this question to you here, so that all the listeners today could actually assess themselves if they are ready or not.
Yeah. So some questions to ask yourself is, what are my 6 to 12 month goals? and where do I want to be? What is the biggest thing getting in my way from getting there? And what have I already tried? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how much effort, time, and investment am I willing to put in to get to that end goal and result? And that'll tell you right away where you're at with it. Again, I don't think that I surely don't think everyone is made for the entrepreneurial life. I think that it looks glamorous because it gives you a flexible schedule. You get to do your own thing. You don't have to listen to the man and follow someone else's ways, but it's not for everyone. It's not for the faint-hearted. It is a lot of hard work, however, and can also be the best thing ever. And it could feel amazing and it could feel easeful and you get to share the things and it makes you come alive and it's joyful and it's all those things at once. But yeah, you have to be ready for it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I remember I went to that Business Mastery on Tony Robbins event. I'm pretty sure you're aware of it. So, and he started his training from the perspective, hey guys, just big percentage of this room, you just may not be ready. And you just listen to that material, you can take it in, but you may not be still ready for that type of activity. And my responsibility here, he said, that just to make sure that you are aware of it. If you are here, you showed up, you just are aware that it may not be for you. And that is really, really powerful what you said right now, because that type of assessment is really important. It's called like realistic expectations and realistic setup of those goals and expectations in your life. If it is not realistically set up, if we go, let's say, to shiatsu, I really love this modality from Japanese culture. So in shiatsu, if you have unrealistic goals set up in your life, your water element is completely unbalanced. So probably it is really related to Ayurveda, right? So, so if your water element is imbalanced, in fact, like what is represented by water in our body? 70%, right? 70% is water, and most of it is blood. So, and blood is really, really powerful substance. In fact, everyone here is studying brain, but blood is really powerful. So it is just setting up realistic expectations matters. And why I asked you this type of question is just understanding if you have like that type of assessment from your clients, because it's kind of like, you know, you give them all those powerful modalities and everything, but then they get frustrated, let's say, even if they get it, they cannot apply it properly in their life. So what I love about what you said is that you do those assessments. It's very, very responsible. What else do you offer?
So mainly I help women to make their businesses visible, and that's usually through social media, them being able to market themselves. So throughout my journey, when I became a healer, I thought, okay, as soon as I get that certification, then I'm good to go. I'm going to start making money. I'm going to have my own business. It's all good. And then you realize once you get the certification, oh gosh, I got to learn how to set up a business. I need to learn how to market myself because that's the way that the world works nowadays. And it feels like this whole other thing to learn and do. And it feels like, oh gosh, I don't want to get started. So a lot of students, because I've led certification programs to become an energy healer as well. I lead Reiki certification programs a lot. And they wouldn't do anything with their certification because they wouldn't know how to. They would feel fearful putting themselves out there, talking about spirituality, being like, oh my God, this feels like it's coming out of left field. So I love bridging that gap and making it accessible, making it less scary for how it could feel actually really natural just to start sharing the things that you're really joyful and excited about. And it's just by leaning into who you are in your own energy type. So I mentioned there's 3 different energy types. Well, when you know what your main energy type is, I'm sure some of you, when you were listening to those, were like, oh yeah, that's totally me. That's what you can use as your marketing strategy. If you're the fiery type, you're going to be very motivated. You're going to be a leader. You got to use those characteristics to your edge. If you're the earth type, you're going to be more nurturing. You're going to be more loving and motherly. Use that. If you're more of the air type, you're going to be very creative. Your ideas are going to be very out there. You use that. And so that's just a little taste of it, but it's really leaning into your own authentic powers and being able to make yourself visible from that place.
You know, when I just started my business, one of the interesting obstacles which I had was that fear to be seen. And I believe so that everyone here, especially women, when they start this type of new endeavor in their lives, that's exactly what they show up to, right? So could you please elaborate slightly more? How do you help women to overcome that fear?
So something that I really love to work on with women is, who is that voice that's inside of your head when you're about to post or when you're about to put yourself out there? Like, what does that voice say? Because so often we just take that as our voice when it's not. It's usually a voice that we've picked up when we were younger or something traumatic that happened that's running the show. So for a lot of people, it's maybe like someone in high school that you're worried about seeing you on Instagram and what are they going to say about it? Or it's going to be that girl that made fun of you in dance class when you tried to try a new move, and she was like, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, you don't know what you're doing. So whatever that trauma is and that voice is, you need to get really clear and then just meet it, talk to it. Why are you still holding on to it? What are you so afraid about this person seeing? And what do you know to be true about this voice? It's kind of like taking Byron Katie's book, and then what do you know not to be true? So it's just this old belief pattern that you usually picked up that's been on repeat that you need to get behind. That's a really good place to start.
So Byron Katie, the work, you mean?
Yeah, that just the concept of what's not true and what's true in that specific practice.
I just wanted to highlight it here for everyone who is listening. I deeply respect this book and the work of Byron Katie. If you read that book, you will find tremendous realizations for yourself, but you have to be ready for that. You have to be ready, because basically the main concept of it, could you please reframe it for everyone here, maybe in 1-2 sentences?
Yeah, so Byron Katie, she's all about taking a belief that you have and then flipping it in the opposite. So whether I'm never going to be successful, what would happen if the opposite were true? So much of our reality is, if you're unhappy with your reality, it's validated through your past life experiences and you just constantly thinking and projecting that onto your future. But what if you started to change and think in the opposite way? What evidence do you have to support that you can be successful in your business? And how can that start to create the reality that you want?
Yeah, that's really powerful. Now, you mentioned one thing here, that you help women to deal with their internal fear to be seen. But at the same time, this fear is deeply connected with another fear to be judged, when we are fearful that what others will say, right? So how do you help also women to overcome this specific obstacle? And how do you deal yourself with judgments? Because usually when we pay attention to judgments, it means we are judgmental ourselves, right?
Yeah, judgments are hard. And I actually had one last week, and no matter how many years in business or whatever, I don't care what it is, it's still going to sting sometimes. It's still going to hurt you, because as a healer, all you want to do is help others. All you want to do is share your gifts. And there's always going to be that reflection. But I do learn so much in those times of reflection, because what is that? Is that person is mirroring back to you where you're still insecure about yourself and your business. So it's always a huge growth moment, as uncomfortable as it can be. But what are you trying to learn from that person? And why is it teaching you actually to become stronger? So a lot of times, like, let's just give the example of cancel culture. Let's say you put something out there and someone says you're appropriating Ayurveda, or you're appropriating some type of ancient science that you're using in an incorrect way. And this makes you think, oh gosh, I shouldn't be sharing this. I should just run and hide, and I'm not going to be sharing my gifts. You may take that route, that may be a part of your journey, and then you realize that is actually more uncomfortable to not share my voice and what I've meant to be doing in this lifetime than to share it. That's okay. Or you can recognize in that moment, how is this teaching me to step into my power even more and to stand up for myself? I don't think we necessarily need to converse with each person that tries to cancel us or tries to put us down, but engaging in a meaningful conversation and getting their feedback can be really enlightening to hear and understand where it's coming from. Usually for them, that other person, they're just projecting an unresolved trauma that they have. And so if you can be really clear in understanding what are your intentions, how can you learn from the situation? Were you appropriating? Or is this teaching you how to be authentic and not to be afraid of sharing your authentic voice? You know, every situation is different and very distinct, and nuanced. So, yeah, it's really not being afraid of what that person has to say, trying to really understand where they're coming from, and then taking responsibility for how you can learn from the situation.
Responsibility first, right? So this is some kind of responsiveness which we develop towards the world. And what I like about what you say is engaging inter-conversation. Because basically when I started my activity here in this world, I was with that quiet voice, I was just like, what if, what others will say? But that quiet voice, it's also complete irresponsibility. If you have something to share with this world, it's irresponsible not to share it, right?
Totally.
So how do you encourage women to start that engagement into conversation? Let's say I am ready. So what is that reminder which I should have maybe, or another trigger point that, let's say I go into conversation and I'm still afraid. What can a woman do so that she would start that process? Because that first step matters, right?
Totally. It's all about building the foundation first. Your foundation is your why. Why are you doing this in the first place? I mean, to start your own business is a crazy thing to do in itself. So you need to have a strong enough why, and you need to have a strong enough desire or dream that's planted within you. So I would write that down and post that somewhere of why you're doing this and the higher purpose, so that whenever challenge and obstacle comes back, you lean back into that, and that intention is always going to be stronger enough to be like, okay, I can get through this challenge and obstacle because I know there's a higher purpose for it. That is everything. And then I also recommend in the beginning of your entrepreneur journey is to make a list of every single win that you have. It's going to take a while in order for you to see those bigger results. That's just how the way of the world works. You have to put in time and effort. I know in Instagram, especially, you see people blowing up after one day, it seems like, but I promise you, each person, it took a lot of time and effort and years to build that. And so you need to do the same thing for your business. And the more that you can acknowledge these little baby wins along the way, it aggregates over time. It creates this very grateful and expansive heart. And a grateful heart is an abundant heart. So notice those little wins along the way and be super grateful for everything. So for example, someone just starts to ask you about Ayurveda. If you just started Ayurveda and you're like, oh, big deal, this person asked me about Ayurveda. It's not like they want to sign up for me and do a consultation. Be so grateful that someone even came up to you and wanted to talk to you and hear your advice about sharing that. Like, acknowledge these first baby steps with so much excitement, which I know for those who are like wanting to be 5 steps ahead can feel like annoying to do that. But when you are, it makes everything lighter. It takes the pressure off, and it actually quickens the process in the end.
Totally. For example, I love comparing this process to building the house. When you start building the house, you have to lay down the foundation. You don't start from the roof, right? When we all already see the roof, the results. But when someone has risen to that level, he actually started from the foundation, and laying down foundation was a really meticulous day in, day out job, right? Day in, day out job. And those guys who are posting lots of stuff already about their results, I totally agree that many times they don't talk about that day in, day out work, which they put down into laying down that damn foundation. My husband, for example, he studies all those billionaires all the time, and one and the same pattern which I hear from him, he says to me, Yulia, you know what? They just master the basics. That's all. These are masters of the basics. I just started not so long ago doing horse riding, and I changed the schools. And in the first school, they were really practicing with me those foundations. For 10 lessons, we were just damn walking on the horse. Now I changed the school, and I don't see they are laying down those foundations, but just because I laid down these foundation previously with the previous school, now everything is easier for me in this school where everything is shallow. So this is quite interesting to observe, and foundations matter, girls. So it's really, really important. Now, one of the obstacles which I personally experienced when I started my business, it's my definition of power. And I think many here can relate to it, because we are living in that patriarchal world in some sense, where everything was created by men, although we create life. And I want just to hear your perspective. How do you redefine that power with women? And how did you redefine probably it within yourself?
To me, power is synonymous with connecting to your intuition, because that's the only power that you have. So the more that you can understand the way your body works, which is a huge reason why healers start to enter this healing realm in the first place, you become a master at understanding your physical body, your emotional body, your mental body, and then your spiritual body. If you can understand that through whatever modality, tarot, Ayurveda, Reiki, yoga, and understand how that system works, that's your power. That's how you know. Because intuition is often going to look like, I feel crazy, no one else around me maybe supports this decision or think this is right, but I know within my body, because I know how this feels and I have been through this before, that this is what's right for me. That's going to create the success in you. That's usually what is going to create those big moments in your business, is because you're taking those risks and you're learning to really trust your own compass. And although you may not be able to see what it looks like and what that end goal is, you being able to kind of jump with open arms and trust into the unknown is what's going to bring you forward, because that's what connects you deeper to the universe. That's what the universe and you, and that's the relationship that you build, is trust into the unknown. And the more that you flex your intuition muscle, you'll get to listen to it. So there's a bunch of ways you can listen to your intuition, but I simply love connecting with, I call it my spirit team or guides. I use those terms interchangeably, and meditation every morning and getting messages and being able to relay those. And they help to guide my business. I don't know where I would be if I didn't have that. There's so many decisions they have to make on a daily basis. There's so many different ideas that come to mind. How do I know which ones to act on? Because I have a strong internal compass, I know which ones to act on. I know now these patterns. I have a system to do it, so that leads me to the success.
So how do you start your mornings so that to make sure that compass is strong?
I used to have crazy morning routines because I've learned so much about so many different practices. And now the more minimal, the better. I tongue scrape. It's an Ayurvedic technique just to get rid of the gunk and the toxins off of your tongue. Simple things like brushing my teeth and washing my face, drinking warm lemon water. But I meditate first thing in the morning. I follow more of like a Vedic style meditation, just peace, silence, some breath work to start with to clear, and then a mantra to anchor me. And then after that, I'll pull some oracle cards for my day, and I'll connect with my guides to see any messages that come through. And then another practice that I love doing is journaling. I do morning pages, and that just really helps me to like get rid of the gunk, get rid of the heaviness or whatever uncomfortable feelings that I'm feeling, kind of check in with myself. And then at the end of that, I start to notice there's like these little creative cracks that shine through, and maybe I'll write poetry, or maybe some ideas will start to come to mind, and I'll start to write those down. And then, I'll start to get into my day. I love a workout. I love moving in my body. That's like a non-negotiable for me, no matter what, every single day, moving my body. And then I start my workday.
I love it. So you mentioned meditation. Do you practice basically passive meditation?
No, it's a form of Vedic meditation. I learned this in India. Basically, the structure is breath work and then Kriya, which is...
Which type of Kriya?
It's a specific energy technique. It's just the Kriya 1. And after that, I work with a personal mantra that I was given from my teacher in India.
Can you name it, or it's very personal one?
No, the personal mantras
right.
you don't
So
share with others.
basically, when it is customized for you.
Yeah, it would only make sense to me because
I respect it. Are there any mantras which can help our audience here, which let's say to empower themselves for the better day? To connect to their soul and to their truthfulness from within, to their authentic self.
Yeah. So you could do a practice at home. Like, for example, if you did just an inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth, like you really don't need anything fancy. And this is coming from someone who knows like 100 different breathing techniques that you could be doing, but that one's so simple and so easy. And then so mantras are different than affirmations. Affirmations are English phrases like, I trust in the changes unfolding before me. Miracles happen to me every day. I love myself. These are affirmations. Mantras, they use the Sanskrit language, and this Sanskrit language is so ancient, it creates a certain resonance within our body that takes on a lot of different meanings. It doesn't translate to English. It takes on a certain vibration. So certain mantras are very universal. One that I love is so hum, and it just means I am that. I am totality, I am universe, and it really helps you to connect for a morning meditation. So just doing an inhale and exhale, maybe like 5 to 10 rounds, and then doing So Hum is a great practice.
This is really powerful. So, this is powerful. Have you been studying Sanskrit?
I mean, since I've been studying Vedic philosophy, yeah, I've learned Sanskrit. I haven't specifically taken a Sanskrit course because there are Sanskrit intellects out there. Like it's a whole language in itself. But I know bits and pieces.
A living being, basically. When I was not studying it that deeply, but I tried at a specific moment of my life. And my native language is actually Russian. I came from Siberia initially, and I found lots of similarities between those languages. You know, one of the interesting things which was in Sanskrit, it was smertich. Smertich, it means memory. So in Russian, smert means death. So when I was just like hearing those similarities, I was thinking, oh my God, how here, like completely different natures, they may intersect into each other. So that is very, very powerful language by itself. And there are lots of energies there. Yeah. So one of the things which I also wanted to figure out from you, which I think could be interesting for all starting entrepreneurs here. When we start our business, we keep having that type of belief that sales and marketing is kind of like not really a good activity. I want to teach, I have so much to share, but I don't want to sell, you know? So how do you deal with this?
Yeah, this is something that gets really misconstrued is like, I just want to be doing my healing thing. That's my expertise. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. But if you think about the age of an artist or even like a musician or an actor or an actress, they say the same thing too. They wish they could just make the movies. They wish they could just write the songs and go on tour, but there's so much more to it. They got press junkets. They have to do interviews. They have to market themselves. They need an Instagram. They need a TikTok. Like this is the way of the world right now. And as much as we can like hate and hide from it, why do you have this strong, if you have a strong charge towards it, it's always something to lean into and get curious about. Is that charge because you're afraid of really sharing these vulnerable parts of yourself? You're afraid of making yourself really visible. That's the most visible you could be is when you share yourself on social media, especially on something like Instagram, where it's literally all about face and posting and visuals. I mean, what could be more vulnerable than that? So if you feel a really strong negative charge towards something, usually when I have clients who are like that, I encourage them just to get curious on it. Why are you so adverse to it? You never want something to have a huge charge against you. Whenever I do, like I used to hate running, and I was like, I know how much I hate running is such a testament to where I need to be in my relationship with running. Now I love running and I wish I could do it every day, but I can't. So get curious about that and then understand what are your preconceived ideas about what marketing and selling has to look like. A lot of times the reason why we don't go into it is because based on what we've seen in the past, that's not what we want to do. So be very clear on what don't you want to do, what you've seen in the past that doesn't feel good, that feels inauthentic. Maybe someone just used like a really salesy technique on you. Maybe you just like felt really uncomfortable in a situation. Like get to know what your experience is so that you can digest that and heal from that, and you're not projecting that onto your future. Because if you think that's what marketing and selling has to be, then of course you're going to feel like it's inauthentic to do it. So once you can release that, start to follow people that you look up to that are doing it in a way that feels authentic, that are doing it in a way that feels natural and not gimmicky or whatever it is your thing against marketing and sales. There are ways to do it and can feel good for you. And when you do, you feel so successful because now not only are you doing the thing that you're really good at, but you're getting to tell people about it. It's really one and the same once you think about it. Like people are not going to be able to work with you unless you're able to speak on it and talk to them. And in that process of being able to market yourself and then sell, you are believing so much more into your own offerings that you know how confident you are in yourself. You have to be so confident in what you're doing and sharing in order to do that. So it becomes one and the same once you learn the mechanics behind it.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Can you please share who are the leaders whom you really, really admire and respect today? Maybe some kind of souls somewhere from India, I don't know, or somewhere in America, whoever they are, but whom you admire and why?
One of my Ayurvedic teachers, I've had him on my podcast a bunch of times. I always revere him. I think that he is just like a really good example of a teacher. He's always just been so calm and patient with me, but at the same time, super empowering, encouraging. And whenever I'm like in a lull, sometimes I'll think of his kind things that he said to me that kept me going as a practitioner and as a business owner in the past. And how he'll just, randomly pop in just to check on me, just like a very big hearted and generous person. And I love my family as well. I think I look up to my mom a lot, and I just like think the role as a mother of just so much selfless and devotion to their children is so beautiful. So I'm constantly looking up to her and in awe. And she's just also a very talented and gifted human as well. So
I love the word devotion. What is devotion for you?
Devotion, it's like this irrevocable connection that you have to something. It's a deep longing, and it's almost like a diligence that you have to something. It's deeper than a love, but it's also like choosing to consistently love that thing over and over again.
Choosing to love over and over again, despite everything and in spite of everything, right? When I first visited India, actually, I felt that code of devotion there a lot.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere. That's one of the beauties of India. Like it's infused in everything that you see. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So for everyone here who haven't yet visited India, there are lots of interesting things happening there. And one of them is the code of devotion. So summarizing everything what we talked about today, and we covered lots of topics, I would love just to have some kind of a summary from you, Angelica, regarding that spiritual entrepreneur, which kind of codes that entrepreneur must have today.
Yeah, I think it's all about following your intuition, knowing your own internal body and system. So whatever modality you're called to, learn about it, experience it, get certified in it. Know it. And if you feel that call to share it with others, then don't hide. Take action. Find the right teachers and mentors that can help you to share your voice so that you can also help to heal the world.
All righty. Thank you so much. With this empowering ending, we actually just want to finish this beautiful podcast for today. I want to thank you for your presence today. It was a really powerful set of learnings. And especially, I love the fact that we finished it with a definition of devotion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. And thank you everyone for listening.